Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. So first up for T&D today, we have our lovely mug from King Leo D&D, good friend of the show. At the end of Season 3, they went ahead and they offered us a discount code gave us, I think it was about half off of this mug. And so naturally, I ordered it. I don't believe that the offer is still active, but it might be on their shop. The code was TND, capital T-E-A-N, capital D. So go check them out. Highly recommend their stuff anyway. They've been super great. I worked with them a little bit as we were both sort of getting off the ground here. And it's really, really great to see where they have managed to get to. And I'm really excited about what they get to do. But they also have this pretty cool mug that, I mean, it's a good mug. I like it a lot. And then inside of that, we have some tension taper from Celestial Seasonings. It's a very long day. I had about 30 screaming children in work today for several hours. So we are hoping to get rid of this headache. But that is A-okay because I was given this information as I came home. I spent about an hour really kind of going over this, trying to figure out everything there is to know about it. And I hope that I have successfully done so. We got some, I don't know if it's surprise content. I didn't hear that it had been planned, but I'm very excited about it. Content, we got some content from Wizards. I was going to say Wizards and D&D Beyond, but they are the same thing now. So we got some surprise content from Wizards with the release of Stranger Things. That is that if you have a D&D Beyond account for the next week, you can go online until the 16th, to be clear. You can go online you can go to your account page on D&D Beyond, and you can claim the Vecna Dossier, which has some lore and a stat block for Vecna in it, which is really, really awesome. It is important to note, just very important to note, that this is not the Vecna that you see in Critical Role at any point. This is also not the Vecna you see in Stranger Things at any point. What this is the, I guess now official imagining of Vecna for Wizards 5th edition game. So that is all important to, be well aware of. But I just want to get that out there. I think it's a really cool concept. And we're going to go over the stat block here. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the things that I like. We're going to talk about the things that I don't like. And we are going to get into it a little bit more here. So, first off, what's really great about this is that you do get a good chunk of lore surrounding Vecna. However, you don't get so much lore that it's impossible to get through and impossible to read. There's a good 6-ish paragraphs here. And that's it. That's all that there is in terms of there. But they're solid-sized paragraphs, and it gives you sort of the rundown of Vecna's deal. And that is an important thing as you're trying to characterize it. However, you don't have to use any of this lore if you don't want to. That should be kind of a given. And I think that it is important to remind everybody that the lore that Wizards puts out is a suggestion sort of universally. And that's just the way it goes. So, you don't have to use their stuff if you don't want to. But the lore that's in here is general enough to where it's pretty easy to drag and drop. And they talk about a lot of the things that are very common with Vecna, including the hand and the eye and the sword. All of those things are in there as well. So it's not like you're missing much of anything. And it does strip it down to pretty much just be information without a ton of flowery flavor text like, and then when he was but a boy, he became... Like, they make it sound nice, but they don't make it so that the information is buried away from you, which I do very much appreciate. In it, they name 4 total, I believe, different artifacts, which is pretty cool. Those artifacts are published artifacts that exist in D&D Beyond, and by extension, Wizards as a whole. The stat block. let's get to the stat block. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk about Vecna himself and to talk through this stat block. So, I'm going to start by saying, this does not feel like a god tier stat block to me. I know. Trust me. It doesn't feel like a real godly stat block, in spite of the fact that Vecna is a god in most iterations, including this one. And that's kind of the important piece there. Specifically in here, it says that more recently, Vecna decamped to the outer planes, where he grew so powerful that he became a god. He has many ardent worshippers, all hungry for a taste of his immense power. The accompanying stat block depicts Vecna in his Archlich form prior to the betrayal. Because Vecna is said to have mastered magic, allowing him to travel through time, he can appear in this form even on worlds where his severed hand and eye are already known artifacts. So, this stat block is not for the god. I wish they had given us one for the god, because I really like the idea of having godly stat blocks. However, that is not what this is. So, don't look at this and go, god stat block? Because that's what I did at first too, and I went back and I reread it, and I came back through, and I have to keep reminding myself, because in my head, it's just an automatic thing, automatically god. I have to keep reminding myself that that is not the case. This is an Archlich form of Vecna, and not a godly form of Vecna. So keep that in mind. They do also have an option in here for you to use the artifact, the Book of Vile Darkness, to run a more complicated encounter. Essentially, you would just add the book to the stat block, and you can use those abilities in addition to the rest of the things in the stat block here. So, it's not that you can't scale it up. It's just that they give you sort of the base version, and the base version, with all of the information that most people have about Vecna already sort of packed into their head, it's kind of disappointing. But as an Archlich, it's actually a really cool stat block. So, to start off, this is a CR26 monster. CR26 puts you on par with an ancient red dragon, which is obviously a big bad thing. And it gives some serious heft to it. However, again, in my mind, a godly stat block should be like 30 or even more. I wish that they gave you also an aspect of Vecna the way that they gave you an aspect of Bahamut and aspect of Tiamat in Fizzbands. I think that'd be really cool. I think it'd be great for people who are running campaigns where like they are active during Vecna's ascension, that whole thing. This is not that. This is Archlich form. So, in order to scale it up, again, you have to use that book, in spite of the fact that I do wish we got a little bit more out of it than that. So, first things first, Vecna is a medium undead wizard who is lawful evil. He has an armor class of 18, natural armor, so no plate or anything like that. Only has 272 hit points, and a speed of 30 feet. Just walking speed, no flying speed, nothing like that. One of the things that I am most bothered by in this first little bit here is the number of hit points. I understand that a magic user with 272 hit points is kind of crazy. However, if you're going to use a monster for a big bad, most of the time you're going to be upping the hit point count on it anyway, if you have a party larger than 3, just because if you happen to roll badly on initiative, your party is going to just circle up and kick this thing to the curb. It's going to be over in 2 rounds because they're going to unload at the top of the table, and that's just going to be the way that it goes. So seeing it start at 272 is a little disappointing, particularly because, and this is important, there are no bonus actions or legendary actions associated with Vecna. Doesn't feel great. Don't love that. Anyway, moving on from that, I, again, wish it was a legendary creature. It's not though. Moving on from that, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, Vecna's wisdom is higher than his intelligence in this stat block. He has a 24 in wisdom and a 22 in intelligence, in spite of the fact that he is a wizard, which means he uses intelligence as a spellcaster. Not really the point. His saving throws are Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, Constitution of 12, Intelligence 14, Wisdom 15. That 12 is great for maintaining concentration on spells. However, you are going to be throwing this guy up against high-level parties because he's a CR 26. So you're going to be really, really, really staking him against some high damage, more than likely, which means that you are going to need that 12 to maintain concentration on your spells. Skills which don't come up all that often. He has expertise in Arcana and then proficiency in History, Insight, and Perception. Just worth noting more than anything with that. So, he is resistant to cold, lightning, and necrotic damage. Kind of a standard for undead boss types. That is just sort of the way that they go usually. And then immunities, also pretty standard for undead boss types. Poison, and then bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks. Which means that pretty much everything else is fair game, which makes sense. However, I wish that there was a little bit more resistances thrown in there, and I wish that I don't know, necrotic was an immunity instead, just because, like, if you're a lich, you're undying, like that kind of thing. So I get it, but I wish it was a little different. I've said mostly negative things about it so far. I like some of these actions that we're going to get to in a second here, and that's the important part. Condition immunities: Charmed, Exhausted, Frightened, Paralyzed, Poisoned, Stunned. That is a good slate of condition immunities. Those get a little bit tricky when you're trying to add them in, because when you throw something like Stunned in there as an immunity, that negates a major part of a monk's attack strategy. And so you have to be a little bit careful when you do that. However, it makes perfect sense in this. Archlich, again, very, very big, very scary. Has True Sight out to 120 feet, so can't go particularly invisible very close to it, and a passive perception of 25. Languages: Common, Draconic, Elvish, Infernal, blah, blah, blah. Proficiency bonus of +8. So, in spite of the fact that it has no legendary actions and no mythic actions or mythic state, Vecna does get 5 legendary resistances a day, which I think is really good. I think that they really do need to be giving these final boss types, the creatures that they are creating, where it is the intention to have them be the final boss at the end of a massive campaign. You really should have 5. You should have more than 3. I think you should have 5, but you should definitely have more than 3. Pro tip for DMs. And by pro, I mean me and total amateur. Special equipment. None of those artifacts listed above are mentioned in here. This one specifically, Vecna carries a magic dagger named Afterthought in the hands of anyone other than Vecna. Afterthought is a +2 dagger. Afterthought is cool, but it's not that exciting, and we'll talk about it in just a second here. Vecna is undying, which means that you cannot kill him. If he is slain, his soul refuses to accept its fate and lives on as a dismembered spirit that fashions a new body for itself after 1d100 years. Vecna's soul can fashion a new body even if its old body was burned to ash or otherwise obliterated. When the new body is complete, Vecna regains all his hit points and becomes active again. Vecna's new body appears anywhere within 100 miles of where Vecna was slain. So, as an Archlich, apparently, Vecna does not need a phylactery, which is a cool concept, and actually something that I like a lot. It makes him able to be a recurring villain over the course of several different campaigns. So if you want to run a series of high-level campaigns set about 75, a D100 number of years apart from each other, wherein the overarching story for the players specifically is to understand and learn how to destroy Vecna permanently. This is a really cool way to do it, because he just keeps regenerating. The players will pick up with new characters and they will find new information, and they can compile information over the course of a longer period of time across different games to come up with the final solution for this, at which point it's like satisfying internally. It's like a big puzzle almost that you can run through as a crew, which can be actually really, really cool. And then unusual nature, he doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep. That's, again, very standard undead thing. Multi-attack. Vecna uses Flight of the Damned, if available, Rotten Fate, or Spellcasting. He then makes 2 attacks with Afterthought. So, Afterthought is aptly named, if at all possible here. Afterthought, the magic dagger that he has attached to him, is a melee weapon attack with a +13 to hit, reach of 5 feet. So he has to be right up on somebody to actually make these attacks. Not always the best thing when you are a spellcaster without that many hit points. Afterthought deals 1d4 plus 5 piercing damage plus 2d8 necrotic damage if the target is a creature. just if it's a creature. It is afflicted by entropic magic, taking 2d8 necrotic damage at the start of each of its turns. Immediately after taking the damage on its turn, it can make a Constitution saving throw with a DC of 20 to end that effect. Until it succeeds on the save, it can't regain hit points. So, the good thing about this is if somebody attacks him, and then it's his turn immediately, and he hits that person with a dagger, then they are stuck not being able to heal all the way around the table until they get back to their turn, where they have a shot to save against that. So, that's a pretty decent effect. However, Vecna still has to be in melee range of one of these fighters in order to make an attack on them. And unless he is dropping down to smack the wizard, he's got to be up on the barbarian, or the fighter, or the paladin, or the ranger, or something like that. And those things don't end well for magic users in close range like that. Flight of the Damned is his recharge ability. It recharges on a 5 or 6. Vecna conjures a torrent of flying spectral entities that fill a 120-foot cone and pass through all creatures in that area before dissipating. Each creature in that area must make a DC 22 Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 36 8d8 necrotic damage and is frightened of Vecna for 1 minute. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage as isn't frightened. A frightened creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of its turns, ending the effect on a success. So, important to note with this one, a lot of times, creatures that have a frightened ability, or a frightening ability, do not have the ability to be, or cannot be affected by it again if they do save from it. This one does not specify that, which means that if this is something that can be used, he can use it as long as he has recharged it over and over and over again to make everybody scared of him. And fear is a much more debilitating feature in 5e than in I feel like it should be, but that's not really the point. It doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, but fright will be a real pain to deal with if that is something that you do have to deal with. However, it isn't that much damage once again. Next up, we have Rotten Fate. Another action here. Vecna causes necrotic damage to engulf one creature he can see within 120 feet of himself. That creature must make a DC 22 Constitution saving throw, taking 8d8 plus 60, 96 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. A humanoid killed by this magic rises as a zombie at the start of Vecna's next turn and acts immediately after Vecna in the initiative order. The zombie is under Vecna's control. This does not have a recharge. This one, he can drop on people all the way through. Every single time. No matter what. That's a lot of damage in a single turn. I would say that if he has enough breathing room, this is the action that you want to be using. Not so much the Flight of the Damned. However, that is really good for building a little bit of that space between you and the people who are attacking you. That right there, that can be something that puts a sorcerer down, puts a wizard down, just immediately. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of damage to just be taking. And finally, in his actions, we come to Spellcasting. Casts one of the following spells requiring no material components and using intelligence as the spellcasting ability. Save DC is 22. At will, Animate Dead as an action. Animate Dead is a longer casting time normally. That's why it says as an action. Animate Dead, Detect Magic, Dispel Magic, Fly, Lightning Bolt, Mage Hand, Prestidigitation. You might be asking yourself, well, you just said he didn't have a fly speed earlier. Why was that big deal if he can cast Fly? That uses concentration then, and some of these are really, really good. 2 a day each, Dimension Door, Invisibility, and Scrying as an action. And once per day each, Dominate Monster, Globe of Invulnerability, and Plane Shift, self-only. So he's got a pretty good stack of spells there. No cantrips, which is interesting to me, but I guess you don't really need cantrips if you can just lightning bolt things at will. Well, I guess he's got Mage Hand in there, and Prestidigitation. But, like, no, the only at-will spell that he's got that is damaging is Lightning Bolt, which is interesting to me. I wish there was another one in there. It doesn't have to be an AoE, it can be a target one, but like I wish that there was one other one in there. Bonus actions that he's got now. This is important. Usually they don't break out a full extra section for a bonus action, but he has one very specific bonus action that is very, very good. Vile Teleport. He teleports along with any equipment he is wearing or carrying up to 30 feet, so not that far, Misty Step range, that he can, to an unoccupied space that he can see. He can cause each creature of his choice within 15 feet of his destination to take 3d6 psychic damage. If at least one creature takes that damage, he regains 80 hit points. He just straight up gets it as long as he lands within 15 feet of a creature. So it's not great for running away, but if you are maneuvering through a battlefield and you drop yourself within 15 feet of, I don't know, who's a midline, a cleric, and they take this damage, Vecna just 80 hit points straight back. And so that does help with the fact that he only has 272 hit points, but it's again one of those things where like he has to land kind of close to somebody and he is going to get stepped on if he spends his turn in there. Reactions. In lieu of legendary actions or mythic states or something like that, he can take up to 3 reactions per round, but only once per turn. And this is the reason why they did it this way, I think, this first one, but I still wish it was the other way. Dread Counterspell. Vecna utters a dread word to interrupt a creature that he can see casting a spell. If the spell is 4th level or lower, it fails and has no effect. If the spell is 5th level or higher, it makes an intelligence check, DC 10 plus spells level. On success, spell fails and has no effect. Whatever the spell's level, the caster then takes 3d6 psychic damage if the spell fails. So a little bit of damage paired with a counterspell is always a good thing. And I think that they specifically set it up this way so that he could use this counterspell as his sort of default reaction. And finally, Fell Rebuke. In response to being hit by an attack, he utters a fell word, dealing 3d6 necrotic damage to the attacker. He teleports, along with any equipment he is wearing or carrying, up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that he can see. So, that's the end of the stat block. Overall, he's got some options for mobility, and he's got some options for damage. But I wish that he had more damage output, I wish he had a little bit more health, and I wish that he was a higher CR. That is really kind of ultimately what it comes down to. I think that he's got some really cool features here and some really cool effects that he can make happen, but it's not my favorite stat block necessarily. I wish that he had legendary forms. I wish he had a mythic form, something like that. Like he is a lich. I wish that he's an arch lich at that. I wish that there was like, when he hits 0 hit points, he like reforms or something like whole thing. It also comes with some really cool art for Vecna. I recommend checking that out. I think it's a really cool piece of art before him. I think most people would agree with that. But that is everything that we were talking about with that today, which means that we are now moving on to what shows we have today and this weekend. Today, we have Mayhem D&D, Off the Rails, Oxventure, Just Roll With It, The Strings of Fate, Rolling with Difficulty, World of Low, The Crown DM. Saturday, we have Coming Together Naturally, Dice Funk, and Strange Hungers. And on Sunday, we have Super Idols, Roll For Your Life, Grinning Griffin, Dungeon Drunks, Library of Nightmares, The Chaos Brigade, Rise of the Forsaken, Chromatic Dice, The Strawcast, High Rollers, and Tabletop Notch. Go check them out. Let them know that I sent you. Because again, someday somebody's going to say something to me about it, and I think it's going to be funny. But that day has not yet come, so I'm going to keep telling you to do it. But that is everything I have to talk to you guys about. So, thank you so much for making me a part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link in the description of this episode. Patrons, we're going to be starting up the suggest and vote for stuff this upcoming week, so that next Friday you don't have me just talking about a random thing that popped up on D&D Beyond. You might, but you probably won't. So go ahead and check that out. Cast your vote. I've got suggestions for the first week here, and I'm going to be opening the suggestion box so you guys can start putting stuff in as well. Thank you guys so much for your support. Now, with all that said, that is everything I have to talk to you guys about today. So don't forget, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.